Welcome to Into the Nexus. This is Into the Nexus episode 118. I'm your host, Kyle Ferguson. Garrett is still out, but I am joined by a special guest tonight. With me, for the first time, is caster of Heroes of the Storm and previous pro player, Dreadnot. Dreadnot, welcome to the show, and thank you for joining me.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me. I appreciate the invitation.
Absolutely, man. I'm so excited to have you here, not only because we're going to get into what the heck is going on in the current meta right now, from both an esports perspective and, digesting that down to how it's actually going to look for solo queue players, duo queue players, and Hero League. But first of all, for those who may not be aware of you, if they haven't seen you on their TVs, what do you do? Who are you?
That's really hard. That's really hard to answer. I played professionally and was on, if not the best North American team, second best, depending on what time you look at it, for almost like a year and a half. And then past that point, I moved into the casting side of things. I host State of the Nexus when we're able to produce a show. On Saturdays is usually when that comes out. I'm a host on Beyond the Nexus, and then I also cast Heroes of the Storm professionally, I guess now. I don't know if I would call myself a professional caster, but I think a lot of people put me there, so.
I would certainly place you in there, man. You have reshaped Heroes casting. You brought on the new caster meta for all of us watching at home. I'm serious. It was a lot of ability names before you started casting. There was, it was very informative for newer players, but we didn't have any frame of reference as to what's happening on the screen and why it's important, or why is it different than the norm.
Yeah. I agree a bit, and it's a weird beast too, right? Because even those casters that were like the meta, if you put it in two different phases, like before I started casting and kind of after, it's not to take away from any of the knowledge that those casters have, because a lot of them actually do still they knew a lot of the things that they knew now. I think it was just more of that nobody had pushed them into an area to where I feel like the community didn't tell them to, and what was happening was working, so why change it type deal.
Sure.
So I'm not gonna sit here and try and take any form of full credit that I was I do like to think that I had some kind of influence, but it doesn't take away from some of the knowledge those casters had before I was involved as well.
Not at all. It was just a new style that pushed the game, and I thank you for it, because you made it way more interesting for me, and that's why I'm so excited to have you here. You talk with such determination and confidence. Is that frightening? This is the internet. I came from StarCraft 2, where our casters were kept to ridiculous standards.
Yeah. I don't think it's the confidence or the determination. I don't think that aspect is frightening. I will say casting as a whole is a very strange and slightly frightening kind of role to have in the community. But I think that confidence is just kind of natural within myself. So I never once go I think I need to be confident in the way that I approach this conversation. It just is a very innate thing for me. So that part I don't think is fearful, but definitely that even just word choice and execution and voice fluctuation, things like that, those are the things that scare me more than anything.
Interesting. So now we get to know what you're afraid of.
Yeah, it's a weird beast, really, how the different tastes in the fans and what they like to see, what they like to hear. Some would no play-by-play, only analytical things. Others are the other way around, where they just don't have any form of interest in that whatsoever, the analytical side of things. And it's just not only that, but then it's how I can sit there and I could provide what I consider to be absolutely just very interesting perspective on the game and decision making that's happening, and just find the beauty within the game that might go over your head naturally. But if I use the same word 3 different times, suddenly I become so annoying that what I say is not nearly as relevant as my execution. And those are the type of things that I personally struggle with severely, and have to work on a lot. And I'm nowhere near where I would like to be in the long run. But that's why that side is scary to me, because it's not only what I have to say for a majority of viewers, it's how I say it.
Sure. So you were a pro player.
Yeah.
For Tempo Storm, as well as other teams before that.
Well, it was technically one that was picked up by Tempo Storm. We were almost the same roster, at least 3/5 of us, for an entire year and a half.
How did you get into Heroes from
I,
other
don't- I,
games or?
I played League of Legends pretty consistently before it, but it was specifically, I don't know how or what. My friend got into the beta, and it was Abathur was the selling point for me. The creativity and the concept behind him as a hero was enough for me to be like, this is actually a really awesome idea. I played with him quite a bit, and then I finally got my own account in, luckily, and it just. I answered a Reddit post one day because I wanted to try and learn, like, what does the 5v5 of this game really hold? And turns out it was the team that I stuck with for a very long time. My entire professional career, really.
That's awesome. So that transition from being a player to a caster,
Yeah.
when you initially got into casting, it makes a lot of sense that you would have all this game knowledge available to you.
Yeah.
But as you continue to be a caster, that takes up so much of your day, traveling, not having internet to be able to watch replays. Like, what does your homework look like, and how do you keep your knowledge so high level while doing all these different things and no longer participating as a player?
I think the most important thing is obviously just an absurd amount of research into different regions, whether it be watching the VODs, studying the builds. Those are two of the most important things. A lot of playing myself personally. I don't think that's a norm for most casters, but I know for me personally, having my own opinion. To truly understand a build and the situations to where it's going to gain max value. I think a perfect example would just be like take Li Ming. She's got a lot of diversity when it comes to her build. Certain maps, certain builds are far better than the others, and against certain heroes, it's far better. But you can look at what the rest of the world is doing, but unless you've truly sat there and been like, oh my goodness, this is the calamity dream right here, right? Like, unless you feel that, I feel like you can't truly give the perspective appropriately. So for me, making sure I play at what I consider a decent level of skill is important. But then draft analysis is something, recording drafts from every single game and every single region, and breaking down common patterns within regions on every single map, and what show the most success and what are regional trends versus universally what's accepted. I think those are some of my most important and longest time put into those.
Sure. Well, we've seen pictures of you tweeted out the the
Oh, my
binders.
drafts. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
that's what you'd have to do in this environment. It's hard to follow HOTS, and particularly when it goes overseas from America for us in NA. I'm sure EU having their streams at their time maybe is a little easier for them. But like, how do you get a hold of replays from China, from Korea?
I mean, if you really try to faithfully follow the scene, you definitely can. I mean, so every season so far in Korea for the past 3 seasons, you have Power League, which seeds into Super League. Super League is the qualifier for the global championship, and then China, it's always going to be Gold League, where sometimes they will be willing to invite either some North American, some Korean, like that's where Cloud9 went. The hours are inconvenient, but always the streams are relatively consistent. So that part, if you truly want to follow it all, you can. But I mean, I think there's a lot of resources, and it's only getting better. The accessibility of that kind of information to a lot of people. It's more separating yourself from being the guy who can interpret it rather than get it, I feel now.
That makes sense. So this has all been, very, very serious, business talk.
Yeah.
How's season 1 been for you?
It's been pretty good. Right now I'm like 200 Grandmaster, like between 2 and 250. I don't remember what I ended today at. I haven't got as much time to sit there and dive into it as I'd like to between working on Beyond the Nexus and casting events. But so far it's pretty good. I've noticed some, maybe a few weird patterns, but for the most part, I think it's been a better experience than the rank 1 system.
That's good. Ooh, weird patterns. We're going to get into that a little thicker later, but is there a preview of something that's been bugging you?
I don't know about bugging me too much. I definitely, it feels this way, right? So it's a very small and skewed sample size. So I don't know if I could say that it's like something that does exist within the system, but I would say that it felt very much for me, promotional matches, that the system is intended to, at least it felt like the teams were heavily skilled against you. I had a very big problem with promotional matches, even though the rest of them seemed very easy and successful for the most part during climbing. So I don't know if that's actually a thing, but it felt that way.
Sure, we all have our own perspectives. I mean, I've been talking on this show about how Lunars are driving me insane, but most people have good experiences, it seems.
Lunara's a beast of her own. She actually had almost she had an insane win rate. I know it off the top of my head, but it's part of our research for Beyond the Nexus, so I'm not going to drop it all specifically. But this week in a competitive level, she has like a sample size of roughly 12 to 13 games and won over 90% of them. So Lunara right now is actually a surprisingly successful hero in all regions of the world.
Esports, though, what about when we get at home?
I think it's the same.
Yeah.
When you look at the conditions that really make her such a great hero, she's one of the few that is awesome. As long as you have a decent ability to abuse your mobility that comes from your passive, she has everything that you could hope for in solo queue. Largely because as long as nobody instantly dies in a team fight, which that composition's post the stun nerf has become pretty unrealistic, she thrives. She has the one of the highest damage output potentials of almost any hero in the game, and very few supports have the ability to deal with what she's able to do. And so it's not even hard to do well on Lunara. Just if the minute you avoid the pressure, if you're successful and not too many resources were burnt, she just rips your team apart. And so it really, facing Lunara forces a lot of team fights because supports can't really compensate for the damage output she has now.
Okay, well, I need to take her for myself then and stop other people from getting her.
Yeah, she's actually pretty impressive right now.
Now, we have quite a bit of news today. We're going to get through the big important ones and continue our conversation on this new meta, as well as take some live questions from you guys, the chat here. So, Tempo picked up Tempest. Now, lots of people are calling this a little doomsay.
Yeah, a lot of people call a lot of things doomsday.
Well, that's very true. And I did receive this information off of Reddit, so already my source is a little doomsay in the first place. But if we're concerned about NA sponsors, and sponsors being teams that are picking up players, not like Pepsi on your shoulder.
Yeah.
And now they're putting their weight into Korea. Does the NA scene have a problem?
I personally don't think so. I think it's a lot of just like nationalistic or like an ego style problem that people are so offended by it. Obviously, I literally sit here with a Twitter handle that says the word tempo right below, so I have maybe a slightly biased view, even though I didn't have too much direct influence on the decision. I was just asked how good are they and things like that. I was more of like the informational scout in the situation. But why is it a bad thing? They were the best team in the entire world, taking out a god among men that was MVP Black for a period of time, and they didn't even have a sponsor. They literally didn't even have somebody to back them. And then somebody, because they're a North American company, goes to the other side of the world to support people who probably put more work into Heroes of the Storm than North American teams have across the board almost, had definitely had more success. And they went to them to support them. How is that a bad thing? That the guys who did the best and worked the hardest, probably, this is a probably situation, got supported. I feel like it's better for the hero scene than the other way around. If we got a mid-level, if Temple went with a mid-level North American scene and the best team in the world couldn't even get a sponsor, doesn't that seem worse for our community as a whole than the other way? Just because it's North American and there are no region restrictions to companies, I just feel like it's such I don't know. I like American pride problem than it is anything else.
Yeah, so we're just a little hurt that this scene over here isn't expanded, but the Heroes esports scene is good. This is very healthy in your eyes.
Yeah, I personally think so. I think if I'm the best in the world at something and I couldn't manage to get a sponsor, I feel like that is infinitely less healthy for our entire competitive scene than the other way around.
Definitely. I would have to agree with that. And I'm not doomsaying it here, but it's just been interesting to watch the community's reaction to what otherwise is a fantastic bit of news for some hardworking players.
Yeah, I think that a lot of people just want it to be a problem because they want to see the region do so well, right? Because esports is so heavily divided by EU, NA, Korea, China, and it's just like, who's going to take it? You've got Koreans who historically have just been overly dominant. China looks pretty good right now. You know, South America suddenly has had this weird spike, but it's all about your group, right? Like, it's just we want them to be the best. but you have to build like an entire scene internationally before you can worry about this like individual thing. And I feel like that, without a doubt, was a far better move for the entire scene than it was just to pick up a like secondary, even if it was the best in it. And I still feel like that was a healthier choice. They were the best in the world. The best in the world. They won a world championship impressively in a game they should have never stood a chance of winning. Somehow managed to, like, a legendary team fight on bottom half of the map on Dragonshire 23 minutes into the game. Like, they did some things that I never even thought was possible in Heroes of the Storm. They deserve every ounce of it.
That means a lot coming from you, because I know you question many teams' decision-making, particularly when we get into that late game.
Yes. So they should have lost that game. MVP definitely heavily misplayed. Personally, I think there was about a 5 to 6 minute period where they didn't capitalize on the advantages that they had compositionally, and they gave 3 fights in a row. You can even hear it when I cast, talking about how they're taking one of the only fights that they can risk this game, and they did it back to back to back. But it still doesn't change the fact that they still should have lost. Like, right, Tempest did not have the team fighting composition to be able to deal with it. And they somehow made it work. So, and I mean, Dami became an absolute legend. The entire team proved themselves. Hyde's a monster. He's definitely the like unspoken hero personally of that tournament. We gave a lot of credit to Dami because you hear the go for the throats and he's always flashy and it's easier to cast, right? The viewer sees it visually. It's awesome, but without the support system that he had from Hyde, I definitely don't think he would have been nearly as dominant.
Well, and that showed in our own home games because Eyes in the Dark just took off after those games,
yes.
and Greymane as well.
Yeah.
I mean, I was very happily almost hipster supporting Greymane after the cocktail, and then Dami goes in and ruins it, and now I'm sitting here having a hard time picking my man.
Yeah, he's a very strong hero now, especially with the adjustments in the last patch. It was actually a buff more than a nerf, oddly enough.
So, who are you looking at for BlizzCon? It's coming up, and teams are getting together. We already have a couple people who have already sort of gotten enough points together to qualify. But after, Cloud9 dropping off and all these roster changes, it's hard to be a fan of a single team right now.
I mean, I would agree. So when you ask me what teams I'm looking for BlizzCon, are you saying which ones do I think will make it, or more so who do I want to see, or who do I think, if I was to like name somebody, who would win the whole thing? Like, there's a lot of different.
Who should people be watching at home? Because that's real. I mean, we want to see entertaining matches, and we're just not sure where to look for them.
Well, so Korean Power League's happening right now. Power League is interesting. There's a couple of beautiful storylines happening currently in the Korean scene, but Super League, I think, is if you have to only see one section of Korean play, I would focus more on Super League because that is their official qualifiers. For Europe and North America, it's obviously going to be the regionals, not so much the qualifiers for the regionals, but the actual regional event itself. When it comes to North America, we have the same storyline of Noventic consistently does well in the first qualifier. Dislikes their roster, looks to roster swap but can't, makes it to Worlds, ends up doing poorly, and then rinse and repeat. So currently they're in the honeymoon phase with Tomster, so if that's going to be very successful, I guess we'll find out with Burbank. Crescendo is the first time the Cloud9 has moved on to any other group of players ever. The first time we see them kind of do that. And yes, they did seem dominant during the qualifiers, but again, they weren't facing some of the other names that have already qualified, like Gale Force. Gale Force got a roster swap. They're in a very unique spot because they didn't perform very well internationally, but it also was their first time. So they're like, this kind of, how much potential do we really have? And this is our moment to show that it wasn't a fluke that we got to Worlds. And then those are, I think, the 3 main stories out of North America. Dignitas, Mind Sanity having very poor performance considering how dominant they were in Europe for some time. Didn't even make it to the grand finals. And then Team Liquid and Fnatic. Liquid with Ethereal Angel, the Tyrael god of BlizzCon 2015 on that roster. And then Fnatic would be, the reason they're so impressive is they've got Wubby, the full Swedish team. And Wubby is actually probably like the fan of Europe. That might be a bold statement because I think Fan personally is a far better player, but he never fails. Every single roster he has been a part of has been successful when they get him onto his team. Fan is the exact same storyline. It just didn't matter where anybody else went. Where Fan was, it did well. So is that going to keep holding on? And then China is a monster right now in terms of like what's happening there with E-Star and their major roster swaps. Are they still going to be able to perform at a top tier level? X Team didn't look too impressive at the international level or even on the Chinese one. And with EDG gone and splitting up and being put into other teams, eStar either just became just unstoppable or the other way around to where maybe some of those new bred roster apocalypse type teams could take over.
That's awesome. What a fantastic rundown, but also hype, man. That's really cool. That we have that much to look forward to.
I mean, there's really beautiful stories all over and really great games. Yeah, like I said, I think if anybody is looking for like the best of the world that you can see in the most immediate amount of time pre-BlizzCon, it's going to be Super League. Specifically, obviously, you've got MVP. You have Tempo Storm now, Tempest formerly, and more importantly is that Team DK split up, and now they have two different like kind of baby teams, right? Like where MVP Miracle had picked up two of their players, and then like Crazy Moving and Sniper. Personally, I think Sniper's kind of the weak link of that roster. As Crazy Moving statistically was the best player in the entire world and has always been on the second best team, always in Korea, but he has better stats than Sake, Dame, any of those teams that you know just absolutely dominant. So is he going to be able to carry in that roster? And then L5 has Noblesse and SCSC, who were also on a very dominant team DK for some time, and they just took out Tempest. So now it's like, uh-oh, is this like the new spawn? And then the real question is like MVP, like losing, have they kind of like felt their love for the game, and are they just going to come back angrier than ever?
Yeah, it was interesting to see their confidence going into this season, and now it seems to be waiting. But I know their interest was they were having some trouble keeping their players together.
It was not so much together, more motivated than anything. At least that was how they expressed it. Obviously, that might be more of like the public version that they give everyone.
Sure.
But it did their interpretation was very much that they didn't know if they felt their work ethic was being supported heavily enough. But BlizzCon is like $1 million tournament, right? It's huge. So we'll see if that's enough for them to kind of get that drive.
Would you like to see something along the lines of the international? I mean, that's what everyone calls for.
Yeah.
Being able to buy something in game to up that prize pool, or do you think that's enough to bring everyone out for it?
Anything that's going to support the competitive scene, obviously, I'm not against. And to be honest, I don't know like the stability of that type of infrastructure, especially when you consider that Dota, that's the only time you ever hear about Dota personally, unless you're directly involved in it, right? And I don't think that is successful for like the longevity of a competitive scene. So as long as if it supports one major event to be awesome, that's great. But the minute it dies year round and you only worry about that one, I think it's a problem. So as long as there's a way to kind of sustain it to where there's continued viewership and desire to be a part of the competitive scene year round, I'm not going to say no, I guess.
Yeah, who could?
Yeah.
Well, this week we got a lot of bug fixes to the general game. You may have noticed that the recent PTR went live with a lot in it, including the fantastic Zagara on a horseback, which I'm a little sad to see gone, but it is gone now. Asmodean can now get up to his 500 stacks rather than the 250 he was locked at for Taste of Blood. And Zagara can now Devouring Maw into the center, toilet it properly, rather than leaving them all on the outskirts. But should people be mawing right now, Dread?
I personally think so. I think Nidus Network is overhyped. I think it can provide a lot of and unique compositions. I think you can get away with it, but it sacrifices too much of your team fight potential to be justified. Still, split pushing is good, but it's still not what it was one day. Like for instance at Promote Meta. So I still think that Maw is the way to go, especially with it being fixed now.
And we also still have all our body block problems, and these are smaller. If you are maybe below Platinum, you might not even notice them. But I think to ask you, what do you think of this is a rather obvious question. It's pretty awful for the pro scene.
I mean, yeah, it's obviously not perfect, but I feel like this was an accident more than anything.
Sure.
So I don't know if I would say that, like, I think it's the end of the world. Obviously, I would like to see it readjusted and find a solution as quickly as possible, especially when you can see that, like, people can stop their own team's heroics when they're channeled, and it's this really weird system. But I guess I have faith that this is like a, guys, we messed this up, like, how fast can we get it fixed type situation. So it sucks, but I'm not like, oh man, like this is the end of the game. This is it. This is our moment. It doesn't feel intended, at least.
That's good to hear. And they did come out and say that there's a couple of them they just want to put out in the world that they know is a problem. Leoric, now when he entombs, he can be pushed out of the way of his own body block.
Yeah.
Doing some major, problems for him. I mean, I like March of the Black King and all, but that's a major issue. Mosh Pit, Ravenous Spirit, channeled spells getting interrupted by friendly people walking by. Enemies don't seem to be able to interrupt them, though, at least not in my testing. And then Misha, Monstrosity, and other summons are just getting locked in. I'm happy for the Hydralisk to get trapped in a couple of lane minions, but poor Misha is having an awful time out there.
Yeah, it's just a weird thing. The whole thing seems very strange. Hopefully they do get it fixed. The Leoric one specifically is really awkward because you're like, well, so does Entomb have any value outside of like a gust isolation strategy?
Yeah, or some sort of sweet, like, through the wall, little tiny Entomb that he can't even reach to damage, but looks real sweet.
Yeah, it feels like that's like the only way. So I don't know. We'll see. I think like you said, they have said that they recognize that this is something that's happening and that they dislike some of the reactions that are happening. And I guarantee there is no intent to allow you to be able to interrupt some of your own teammates' spells because of this weird system. So I think it's a matter of time, and I feel like it's probably going to be a priority for them.
Yeah, the one I was able to confirm as a bug right now was Lily, while cupsing, is able to push around a Ravenous Spirit channeling Nazebo or any channel and turn it off.
It sounds like the new meta, really.
Don't mess up your own team.
Yeah, it's like Nazebo's biggest weakness is he can just be interrupted. But what if he's juking because his team is pushing him out of the way? Think about it. That is legendary strategy right there.
Yeah, sadly it turns it off right now, but how awesome would that be to relocate
him
into a corner?
Yeah, right. He's like, yeah, this is gonna get interrupted here, and then you just like don't worry and just like slowly push him into the corner. It's like there you go. That's the Ravenous Spirit.
Look,
position.
my range isn't long enough to win this fight right now, but if two of you get together and push me back while we do the team fight, we can kite them.
It'll be like a fullback with a lineman in front of him, just like go.
Oh, that would be fantastic. I remember some really weird interactions like that happened with StarCraft, and they were very quickly taken away. But some of the oddities of people pushing Archons through force fields, a legitimate strategy, but having to use other units to do it.
Yeah, I think it's going to be looked at pretty quickly because of that. So
we also had the developer Q&A balance conversation on Reddit this week.
Yeah.
People came out, asked questions, developers answered them. But these are just the tidbits, the highlights of it, and there's quite a bit to it. Of course, the Nazebo rework is coming.
Yeah, I don't know, is that the first time that's ever been said? I guess I felt like for some time people knew that Nazebo was going to be looked at. I think it was announced with like Tychus. It's exciting personally. His kit is very boring right now, at least his talent diversity on top of it, like what it provides. So I think that's really exciting. He's always a scary hero when I hear the word rework because he's either like just absurdly dominant or completely unimpactful, it feels like. So hopefully we find a more middle ground after this one.
Yeah, they said back with that Tychus rework that they wanted to raise the skill cap on a spider build.
Yeah.
And I don't know what that means.
I'm guessing it means that if you actually have to hit your skill shots rather than just flinging stuff at your opponents and just like, yeah, this can't miss. Right? So ensuring the fact that if you are more skilled, like a Li Ming, right? Like if you do hit perfectly something, it becomes impactful and those spiders are useful. It's not like a curse where you're just like, all right, so I'm like a mile away from them and here's my reaction range spider and it's going to stop them even if I don't hit them. So I think that's the main goal, is to make him probably more skill oriented.
Do you think they'll do it, just simply? I mean, these spiders come out and they have a lot of range. They could reduce the range or increase the damage that the actual jar does. It's kind of a shame to see Nazebo's throwing that jar just to let the spiders out when it does actual on-impact damage.
I think there's far bigger problems than Nazebo's spiders and the situation around how they work, I guess. Like, personally, Death Ritual is not only one of the strongest talents in the game, but it's like a must-have. So his level 1 is pretty much non-existent.
Well, and it's up against Demolitionists still.
Yeah, double limit. Yeah, and it's just like, it kind of makes no sense when the other one gives you the opportunity to gain more health and mana, but you essentially gain that by getting Death Ritual in the first place. So it's like, well, so why would I take this again? And there's like a lot of other situations, like where yeah, his skill shots, how the zombie wall works. Like zombie wall is probably the coolest part about his kit. And Ravenous, I think, is a unique dynamic. But outside of that, it feels like the rest of it is just very much you just spam things and your opponent's health bar is slowly lower as you are one of the healthiest and beefiest backline heroes in the game.
Which has always been fascinating to me because with Zerg, you had to have your enemies make mistakes and get them out of position and surround them with all your little lings and take them out. And it felt like that's what Nazeebo was going to do. Just punish mistakes, but you're right. It's just sort of throwing things. And will this work? Well, yes, it does. There it goes.
Yeah, and it's you can't miss, right? Like he always gains value. It's why Nazeebo, he's a very forgiving hero. It's like a lot of the heroes that are successful in solo queue, like Lili, they aren't terrible heroes, but the best thing about them is they're just insanely you can't be bad at Lili. You can't be bad at Nazeebo. Like, oh, I got caught out as Nazeebo. Look at this. I have 4,000 health. Like, it's hard to take me down. It's like an Asmodan with not the same frame to be body blocked, right? And it's things like that, like Lili with the happy feet, with the mobility that she provides, and you can never fail with your healing. You're always doing the same amount of effective healing. And I think that, personally, that's what I would like to see being adjusted the most, is to make it them you can be bad at Lili, you can be bad at Nazeebo, but you can also be great, which you can be neither right now with those heroes. There is a bar, and you can't be, there's like a 0.01 above and below you can be, depending on how good you are at the video game.
Definitely. There's a cap where it stops being better. Sure, you can be mindful of wins and blind at efficient times, but as long as you got that under your belt and you're spamming your Q, you're kind of good.
Yeah.
And they brought this up, actually. They were saying they want to make sure they don't add too many easy characters because those end up being all we see in the pro scene.
Yeah. I think it's safe to say, strategically, the easiest composition is almost always the best. It needs to have obviously way other variables you have to consider, but if two are equal on all fronts and one is more difficult to execute properly, it will always be the one that is better. I think a simple example of that was when Toronto was just legendary and an absolute must pick when everybody stuns the CC. And it's like there were other options, right? You could go with a unique like 1-1-3 with split pushing and everything of the like, but the simplicity of just stun, blow up will as long as it is decent, will always be easier and more efficient. The min-maxing and risk reward is just so much better with those comps.
That makes a lot of sense. That's a good way to put it. So why don't we see our solo queue top winners in esports that much, like Nazeebo, like Diablo?
Nazeebo is just largely because he's a worse version, in my opinion, kind of Lunara, in the sense that he does a large amount of spread AoE damage, yes, but it is in most situations negligible, and he has no major selling point that makes him a reasonable pick other than he's hard to kill. And he's not so hard to kill that he makes him an awesome pick. Like Lunara can do a lot of the exact same things that he can: spread damage, apply pressure to main tanks, get a lot of AoE poke, have it hard for your supports to be able to heal. But she also provides, I don't know, Nature's Calling, better AoE damage than him, a massive AoE slow against your opponents, giant killer. So he just doesn't have enough to separate him.
When pro players are deciding these things, is it actually as exciting as I hope, that you're all sitting in rooms with lots of whiteboards and you got little figures and your little pushy sticks on the tables of a map?
Yeah, and you literally just take, so it's like, here's last patch, and it's just like a graph of where everybody stood, right? And then you have the new one, and everybody just like slightly pushes up the picture of Nazeebo, like he's a little bit better, and then drop, and you just look, what are the top 15 heroes? Because that's all we're going to play for the next week. No.
Exactly, yeah, the Sandsville and the Dumbledore Hall, and that's that.
Yeah, no, sadly it's not that way.
So Johanna was also brought up. Night Take Spawn. They're looking to add some talent diversity.
Yeah, I mean, understandably so. It's kind of like Death Ritual. Like, why would you ever take anything else? Johanna is inferior comparative to most tanks in almost every situation except for wave clear and post 20 survivability. Post 20 survivability, far too late in the game to rely on it as being a viable competitive strategy. So then you go for the wave clear dynamic. And so you have to take it. So I think they'll compensate for her problems in other areas, but then remove the wave clear.
Interesting. So what's wrong with Johanna in the mid game?
Okay, so Let's compare it to another tank.
Cool.
Name another one that you consider to be a little bit more viable, and then we'll talk about the impact that they'll have on a team fight.
ETC gets banned all the time.
Okay, well, so then we'll talk about ETC. So not only do you constantly have the threat of the potential mosh pit, which is going to be very apparent, but let's just say mosh pit just has no influence at all. He has mobility and harder CC to be able to stay onto the squishy when they get out of position. The duration of Blessed Shield is very low, and your condemn and your slow is also pretty weak in most situations. So like that squishy who overextended, the Sylvanas who's like, yo, I got to get this fort, right? And she's staying a little bit too long. Johanna is going to throw a shield at her, pull her in, and she's going to E away. ETC will be able to be in a position to where he provides so much threat that like he will keep her there more longer, which will allow your team to be able to make more plays. Also has the potential of knockback, but then in the team fight also has the massive AoE mosh pit that you have to constantly be fearful of. So her just CC has never been good enough. Her peel is not great. Her engage is not great. She is just very, I can wave clear, and that's cool, but that's about the end of it. It's just Blessed Shield, honestly, is too weak to justify, and her condemn with her punish is also too weak.
I've just been going Falling Sword.
I mean, even if you do that, right? Like, I would still almost rather just one Murd and Stormbolt. Like, next time you play Johanna, take Blessed Shield and throw it and beat, like, just hit as much CC as you can, and then think about, what if I had just had, like, a better CC? Just one, open that fight with just one better CC, you would be like, we probably would have killed that person right out the gates. But instead, everybody's a little bit low, and we aren't able to totally capitalize on it. And that's usually why she's less valued than some of the others. Personally, I have she's like one of the heroes I have like a vendetta over. Like if you pick Johanna in a majority of the compositions, you misdrafted somewhere else to where she was the only reasonable option remaining.
So you wouldn't take her for blind alone over other tanks?
I would not, no.
That's interesting. I mean, in a solo queue environment, ETC Diablo are just so powerful because you isolate a hero and you go, look, cats, look at this one I got for you. Whereas Johanna says, here's a handful, choose your pick, and no one does, and we all attack different things.
Yeah, and the chat also brought up a decent idea as well that you could talk about. Her other selling point would be her unstoppable. She does that better than every other hero in the game. But when we consider that unstoppable, and you're like, well, that's actually a pretty big selling point. Murden was only just recently changed, but he had the exact same thing, but it was a gap closer, and it was a shorter cooldown. So, I mean, it's just like when you cross compare, she's just not nearly as impressive.
Butcher is going to get a unique role.
That one's cool.
What did you think of Tychus's unique role? He'd be, I think, our most recent, adaptee of this philosophy.
I like it. I like Tychus's role. He's just he's like kind of what I consider like a tier 3 style hero. He's actually probably better than that, but the ones that are very good in the right situation. And with that unique role style, right? Like all those heroes will meet that tier where they'll see play, but it has to be under the right conditions. And I don't have any problem with that at all. I think it's a beautiful part of the game because then it can draw a ban, or you'll be like, we know they're going to be looking to take Tychus against a double tank. What is Tychus vulnerable to? Or Tychus is just bad on this map. We can get more out of a high prioritization wave clear character earlier into the draft. They'll take the Tychus, but we think that trade-off is going to be worth it.
What do you think that role could be? I mean, that's the problem with Butcher is everyone just says, well, there are other people who do what he does better.
What is his role? I don't think it's gonna be an assassin, like the choose that one person, kill them. I think it's going to be, I don't know, honestly. Actually, his kit is so divey, bursty that I feel like they've gotta be trying to make micro adjustments around that to be able to give him a little bit of a more unique approach. I don't know what it's gonna be. I almost want to say bruiser.
That makes sense. Well, with his size, it's a shame for him to be so squishy.
Yeah, that is true. But he also has the highest lifesteal in the game by a large margin and the highest damage output. Even over to Greymane was 16 in Worgen form, even in this patch, I think. That might be wrong. And don't quote me on that one.
I believe it if you're doing nothing but the Blood Pictures build.
Yeah.
So they said they're thinking about a minor buff to Artanis, which is a frightening thought.
The minor buff to I love it. I think it's an absolute must-have. He has only one map he's even barely viable on.
Which one's that?
Battlefield of Eternity, amateur opponent. That's the only reason he has any value at all in this game currently. And I think it's awesome. Where they buff and how they buff, obviously, this could not be the word minor. They are like, yeah, we'll just tweak this a little bit, and turns out being insanely terrifying because he's one of those heroes that I don't really have an official term for them, I guess, but it's more of they sit on this weird teeter-totter where it's just like one poke in the opposite direction, and it's just an avalanche of just how do we stop this now? Illidan's the other one, right? We've seen it historically, like they do it a lot. Is those ones that have kill potential, but survivability and heavy skirmishes. And those are the ones where you just like mess up a little bit, and you're like, how do I deal with this hero? I have faith that that won't be the case here, but he is one of those terrifying heroes.
Does that amateur opponent build on Battlefield Eternity do triple strike?
So you have the opportunity to do so. It's not an absolute must-have. It's kind of situational. It typically, we've seen it in the past, go with more of a attack speed E-based in the early, and actually just E-based in general, and it would be like a double swap style play, and then triple strike isn't something that you might need to be moving into. Usually they're more fearful of survivability and utility than abusing the hero's damage potential and skirmishing. But you can. In solo queue, I'd probably suggest it, but I don't think it's a must-have.
While we're talking about minor nudges that have big impacts, I don't know if actually minor's the word. What's up with Kerrigan right now?
She is a monster right now.
Level 7, that increase to the stun area is just insane.
Yeah, it's the... All right, so like that's what we see as insane. And it is. It's crazy. You don't even have to be good at the hero. You literally just have to be like, my opponents are roughly in this area, so I'm just going to press all my buttons in their direction, and you're probably going to see success in a team fight. I think the most terrifying part about her is the enabling of her survivability. That you have to be fearful of not only the insane amount of damage output and burst that she can have instantly in a fight, but then also she now has the survivability and actually sustained DPS, for how strange that is to say, to make it to where combo number 2 is coming out, right? And that is a terrifying version of Kerrigan with the psionic pulsing at 4 with the taking Maelstrom. You're ticking for like 250 damage a second.
Yeah.
And then you're just getting shields and survivability, and then by that time you have your second combo coming up, and you're just like, how do we stop this? And the answer is like you don't. You just run.
Math gone wrong.
Yeah.
They went, here's a nice buff to her auto attack damage, and that equals shields, and that equals survivability, and that equals team inclusion, and now top ban.
Yeah, she's scary right now, and she's always been a solo queue stomper. So when you make her good, like competitively, she's less viable personally than she is in solo queue. In solo queue, I'm just like, I either have to have it or I can't let them have it. Whereas like competitive level, she could still be relevant, but not just like a must-have. Just because she's so good at like, people in solo queue have terrible map awareness for the most part, right? Even on maps where the rotations are blatantly obvious, like Cursed Hollow, they're not in mid. Okay, well, they're going to be going bottom. We saw them walking bottom. 5 seconds later, like they creep out a little bit too far, and you're dead. She just has early game kill threat potential everywhere, which can exponentially push your lead by making them miss soak and everything. And there's so many other factors, but that makes her even more hard to deal with in solo queue. It's not just the team fight, it's just every part of the game you have to be afraid of her.
Yeah, well, in some heroes you got to wait till a certain level to be afraid, but if it's all game, I guess it's a bit of a problem. And they brought up her as someone who's going to receive minor number tweaks and maybe talent changes. Do you think she's the one, as well as Greymane, just are really powerful dive characters? Even Tyrael is great right now. Is that what's keeping Gul'dan down in your eyes?
I think Gul'dan struggles in the sense that he naturally draws too many resources from the support. He doesn't have enough range and raw damage output to justify the amount of resources he sacrifices of his own HP. Once you hit that second rotation of spells onto your opponents, you're probably going to be sitting around the 60 to 50 threshold of HP percentile-wise. And that's not even counting the fact that you're like, that's like just not even taking poke from your opponent. Now consider the idea that they're trying to get you low and kill you. He draws a lot of resources from his support, and typically supports in most successful team fights are going to be putting resources into bruisers and as little as possible into the backline. And I think that might be the biggest struggle with him right now.
That's a cool way to think about things. I mean, it's easy to think about individual value, but thinking about the resources that are being used up as a team whole.
Yeah.
That's a good way to break it down.
It's like a simple way to put this, if anybody is struggling with the idea, it would be like you're Rhaegar, and you have an Nubarak, an Illidan, and a Vala on your team. If you use your Ancestral on the Vala versus one of those other two heroes, how much of a direct positive impact did you feel like you had on the team fight compared to ulting the other one? It is you can single-handedly win the team fight because you had a godlike Ancestral on Illidan or on the Anubarak. The minute it becomes Vala, she was drawing so many resources from you that you can no longer enable the team and the reasoning for your pick in the first place.
So wouldn't a legitimate strategy to maybe make Gul'dan work just to be leave him alone, don't touch him with heals? I mean, his natural health is high enough, but do we all see a half bar and go, oh, get him?
I mean, there's no hero in the game right now that is so, how do I say this? That is so negative of an impact in a team fight that when they get low, it's just like worth just ignoring them, except for the exception of like people who have death passives like Uther. Like, right, if Uther's leaving him alone is actually more beneficial than killing. But, like, if you tell me I'm, like, any hero that can capitalize on the misposition of a Gul'dan and he's sitting at that 50-40 threshold, and you're like, well, if we just let him, like, just leave him alone, it's just too free to take the 5 versus 4 team fight and just pick on him. And then even as the support leaving him alone, then you lose him. And unlike other MOBAs, because the scaling and not individual gold and buying resources, everybody is roughly 20% of your team fight, which means now you only have 80%. That's not even counting talent tiers and individual hero spikes. So for the most part, it's not a really viable one. The only semi-viable, I'm not saying he's unviable. One of the ones that I think he doesn't suffer from that problem is actually with Medic, but that's because she just usually is naturally throwing out so many healings that it's not inconvenient to make sure he's doing okay.
Sure. Kind of goes the territory.
Yeah.
They're thinking about giving Nova bribe. They said they did not want to give her any wave clear at all.
Yes, I think that's awesome.
But bribe might be an option.
I think that will. I think I don't totally hate that. It'll allow her to make kind of bold and risky plays, abusing her lack of, like her using her invisibility to be able to like go take your opponent's camp using a bribe really quick. She'll draw a threat onto the map outside of her kill potential alone, which I think would be pretty good for her. And most situations, stealing your opponent's mercs outside of shaman camps doesn't do so much that it's like, wow, how could you like let this hero have that? So I kind of like the idea. I think maybe I'd approach her a little bit differently, but I don't think it's a bad approach. I like the idea that it draws more resources in some way, shape, or form from your opponent and from you that isn't just your kill potential. It's like, is Nova here? If yes, then she's doing something. If no, then why is she on the other side of the map? Like having her sit and even soak, you're just like, seriously? So it gives her something else to do, right? I don't totally hate that.
Sure. Do you think in this, I mean, this is jumping ahead a little bit in our discussion, but
yeah,
do you think that bribe is a thing? I mean, lots of people are quoting this as a specialist meta, and you said you're not putting a lot of weight on, someone like Nidus Network. You'd rather have the Maw. Are we going into junglers? Will we think about, do we have a bribe, and should we take Nova for that?
All right. So this, I think, is a change that will evolve over time. But for the current state, nobody has really taken any major attempt to try and abuse the new adjustments when it comes to mercs or split pushing it outside of just like having a global, right? Because they naturally are gaining more value now. I would say that I think in certain maps and compositions that it isn't unreasonable, largely because the 50% speed up when it comes to the camp spawning. The first thing that comes to mind is Blackheart's Bay. Not only do you get more coins at that rate, you also then are providing more push on the map, which is huge for that map because then it allows you to get the turn in or get a split push value in some way, shape, or form. Bribe isn't a thing right now because in the end, you almost always have to win a team fight, and if that talent at level 1 like Mana Addict is even an option, why would you risk it through a bribe? But those with weaker level ones, it definitely could be something that people look into for that increased capture time. I just don't know outside of Blackhearts. Actually, maybe even Dragonshire, and that might seem a little strange at first, but those are two maps where quickly getting a large amount of pressure with a bribe, if it's not too big of a talent trade-off, might be something we see.
Dragonshire because you can double stack the giants in the bottom and get a win out of it?
Not so much double stacking. It's more so in most situations, if you have the mercs, because they only go to the lanes that the shrines are in specifically, especially if your opponent is losing their fort in either one of those lanes, in the mid game, frequently being able to apply pressure through a camp is almost always going to draw you a rotational advantage on the shrines. You'll own one, and you'll be making the rotation to the other and drawing a fight around a shrine you need, which increases the probability of a Dragon Knight by a large amount. So that could be a change that is beneficial for that map.
Well said. Rexxar is getting looked at for some control and talent diversity options. I've always been a little afraid of increasing Rexxar's control because that to me means Misha's power goes ridiculously down.
Yeah, what was their change for him? Well, what did they have? They're going to make Rexxar actually Rexxar and not Misha being Misha with her pet Rexxar?
Something about control. He'll be easier to control, and then talent diversity, because right now there's not too many options for him.
I think that talent diversity is awesome. Anytime they try and promote that at all. Outside of that, making Rexxar the whole control dynamic and things, I mean, sure, go for it. Making him easier to control is awesome as long as it doesn't take from the outplay and skill potential of the hero. Like they kind of originally brought him in, but they've slowly given him more and more. So as long as they promote that, that's pretty neat.
Falstad nerfs incoming. It seems like they're going to target Gathering Storm at level 1.
Yeah, I think that's pretty expected, and largely it seems like they have the mentality that they really want auto attack and mage build to be an option. Personally, I don't think it will ever be the case where it's like, which one do I want to do? And if so, it's in rare situations. But I mean, he needs a nerf. There's a lot of different ways that they could approach the problem because he has so many major selling points right now, whether it be the global, whether it be the insane amount of scaling that he gets off his Q, which at post 7 already just amplifies the damage by a large margin, or that Gus is a very short, game-changing, insane utility heroic. So there's a lot of stuff they can do for him. So.
Yeah, I feel like, just being a Blizzard game already kind of takes away some creativity from the team because we have so many mid-maxers coming from World of Warcraft and Diablo that you don't get to have these cool hybrid characters, maybe. There'll always be a best build. I have a really unique view on that is probably complex enough and off topic enough that I don't know if we want to totally get into. I'm willing to, but it's mainly just I'm a dude who likes to look at patterns that we see in the past before trying to see where we'll go in the future. And historically, almost every single talent tier for every single hero that we've had a questing talent or any form of just any questing talent where you do this, and something gets better. It's either one of two things. It's either absolutely a must-have and overpowered, or it's completely useless and completely neglected. The only exception to those are globes, which are kind of a beast of their own, and I personally think it's unfair to call those quest talents. And Falstad's no different in that situation, to where it's really either one build is innately just so much stronger and will be consistently that the other build it very rarely will show itself. And I think that we have no reason to think that will change for some time. I think that's a smart observation. I mean, certainly Gul'dan came out with one bummer of a quest talent on him, increasing the range of Fellflame.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like, and you're just like, wow, but then you look at his corruption one, and you're like, the trade-off is just insanely better.
This is how I win the game, right?
Yeah, and then, I mean, like, the most straightforward, basic example of this, not cross-comparing all the talents that every hero has in the entire game, would be Gathering Power. And when you look at Gathering Power before all the talents came out, where it was questing talents and everything, Gathering Power on Murky was either a must-have or completely useless. Nova, completely must-have or useless. Nazebo, must-have or useless. There's not been a single time where Bribe was on a hero and it was Gathering Power, and it was like, maybe I'll take that this game. That could gain some value. It was either, this is the only way to play this hero, or this talent is too risky and I'm never going to take it.
Do you feel that extreme about Greymane and Wizened Duelist?
No, but that's because he's just he has so much other, the damage amplification that thing gives is just so ridiculous, especially after the 3.45 and the compositions you can build around him. He definitely has more viability, but it's getting a little bit less viable now than ever. Last patch it was almost a 50-50 where you would go increased range, but now that they've nerfed auto attack stancing, and personally I am not too sold on the 16 quite yet, that Wiz and Duelist is pretty much only more popular to the point where I personally haven't fluctuated, but I don't think it's a must like some of the others have been.
Yeah, Eager Wolf's neat, but I think you go too fast. There just comes a time when you attack so fast, attack speed. Like if I'm Abathur and I hat Tracer and give her 15% attack speed, nobody cares. Like you don't even see it.
Yeah.
Whereas I do that to Hammer, and now we're cooking.
Yeah. It's all such a, the whole thing is very unique. The questing approach, and that was, I mean, everybody was like, why does Dread think that questing talents are the end of the game and everything? And I've never thought that they would ruin the game by any means. I just personally, my philosophy, I guess, and approach to the game would avoid them if it was my choice.
I think that's a fair assessment. So they mentioned a lot of other heroes just completely offhandedly. There's going to be changes for Kael'thas.
Yeah.
We already brought up Kerrigan, Butcher, Nazebo. Chen is getting something done to him. Greymane, something done to him. And then Vala. Is there anyone that didn't make this list that you would like to see?
I think when it comes to talent changes, there's a lot of heroes that I would kind of look towards. But specifically, Malfurion? I would like to see Malfurion on that list.
He's got a weird build.
He's got a weird kit, and just numbers and everything about him is very strange. But I guess I would like to see a couple of adjustments to supports, kind of like we saw with the attempt to innovate with Karazim and his insight and things like that. I would like to see more to some of those lesser played supports. And when I say supports, I don't count Tyrande or Tassadar.
How does Uther look to you right now?
He's okay. He still has a heroic that is so strong that he will always kind of be viable as long as the rest of his kit doesn't totally suck, which it doesn't totally suck. It was given a lot of different talents. So far, the standard that we've kind of seen is a double W through 1 and 4, and the remainder of the builds stay the same. Some North American teams have gone Righteous Defender at 16 for the 50% damage reduction, but to me that doesn't make sense because the probability of that 50% damage reduction actually making up for a Benediction double Q on a target is really unrealistic. And the utility and options that you get, especially with the new W being better, I personally am not too sold on that unless it's like on like Illidan, and even then it's got to be timed perfect, and again the easier composition's usually better. So but definitely. I think he's got a spot. Anytime you're going to have a hero with Greymane and Wiz and Duelist only getting stronger, I feel like Uther's gotten stronger.
Well, and easier to me for support almost means bringing some damage, whether it's Lili or something like that, just so that's the biggest thing you face, it seems. Like, if a team is just going to get completely stomped, it's because they didn't draft enough damage, and Uther, even Monk, can sometimes be responsible for that. Morales as well. Yeah,
they definitely can provide that. I agree that you can lose a draft with that. I think if you were going to lose a draft, like in solo queue specifically, harder, and you just have no ability to deal with a game, it's probably your lack of wave clear before anything else.
Awesome segue, because now we're going to get into what this new meta looks like for Hero League. And you recently got Grandmaster.
Yeah.
Is there any advice you would give just off the top to anyone looking to do the same? I mean, what did you employ a strategy in your head? Did you have to step away and go, something's not right here, and come back later?
No. My advice to anybody who wants to try and get better, whether it's the approach to Grandmaster or Silver or whatever you've set your own goals to, would be number one, stop blaming your team. You're the problem. And anytime that it becomes easy, and I do it all the time too, everyone always does it, but if you are truly looking to get better, you are the problem. And anytime you look to blame somebody else, you'll not get better if you have that mentality. So that would be step number one. Step number two would be consider looking at your own replays. 3 would be understanding the meta and why heroes are good in certain situations and what their selling points are at the competitive level. That will translate over to your Hero League games. And 4, wave clear is OP.
Wave clear.
Wave clear is like something I've always valued so much in competitive.
Well, you kind of introduced me to that. It was on a Dragonshire map. I don't remember what tournament it was anymore, but you were basically saying that one team here has to bust buns to win this game because they've got a team fight single target group, whereas the other one is just going to clear lanes and have an easy day.
Yeah, and that is a huge problem in Heroes. Not huge problem when you don't have it. I think a simple way to try and articulate this to people is cross comparing kind of to other MOBAs. You have like League of Legends where you have the ability to get last hits to get gold, and then you can buy the items and you can skill individually, and that's how you get stronger. The closest thing we have to that in Heroes is soaking. And minions, even in the early game at level 1, you get less experience from a kill than you do an entire wave of minions. Kills are not that influential until death timers get long. They don't really hold too much weight unless you're either 3 levels behind your opponent or you gain something off the death timer. So minions are your number one resource because XP is the thing that makes you better. And the reason you can win fights so convincingly is because you have your heroic and they don't. You have your 16. You have that major talent tier spike. So that is the most valuable resource in the game. But unlike other MOBAs, you don't have to wait. You don't need that last hit. You don't need anything other than getting rid of the wave as quickly as possible in your area, not even considering the fact that those minions now do double the bonus damage to structures they once did with a 50% net gain in terms of what they actually provide in terms of sieging. So now they're going to be draining ammo. They're not going to be threatened by anything once they're out of ammo whatsoever. They're going to have free reign on the front walls. They do a large amount of damage, which, guess what, gives you more XP, which is the most valuable resource. So you burn the least amount of time soaking and getting experience whatsoever, maximizing the amount of experience your team can get, and then also allows you to make quicker rotations to skirmishes and team fights. So you legitimately are minimizing the amount of experience, which is the most valuable resource in Heroes, in every way, shape, and form, and still benefiting your team as best as you possibly can.
So you brought
Go ahead.
Interesting points throughout all that, so I want to kind of dissect it a little bit.
Okay.
So right now, we've stopped diving for the towers for the most part at the start of the game. Fantastic.
Okay.
Hooray. Yeah. But now we're all esportsing the middle. We all run in the middle and have some ridiculous, just complete nonsense fight.
Yes.
Should we just apply ourselves in full there? I'm getting on Greymane, and I'm staying ranged. I'm thinking this guy's a fool diving in like this, diving. Should I just apply myself as hard as possible because it really doesn't matter and getting a kill will help people feel good?
Are you solo queue or are you duo queue? Because I can give you an answer that actually would be good if you're duo, but if you're solo, most characters can't do that strategy.
Okay.
In general, sticking with your team, even at level 1, is a better choice because you should not have faith that your teammates are going to understand the circumstances unless you make it very clear beforehand and everybody says that makes sense. We'll try and do our best to sit back, and you're going to get the wave soak as best as you can in every way, shape, and form. The skirmish at level 1 started originally when wave clear, obviously the 4-1 strategy competitive play so much is so good, but then also when the Toronto meta happened is when the fight at level 1 happened because you have the dominant level 1, and with Toronto's nerf, it seems like people have no longer started to try and consider, do I actually have the stronger level 1? If you do, you should get high feet. You should go for the kill potential. But it seems like a lot of people just felt like, well, you just smash your face into your opponent. And that's not actually how that works. It was done for a very good reason originally. It just hasn't been so much anymore. And, but if you were to lose one person in mid and you soak in another wave completely and deny it from your opponent, you technically are going to be farther ahead.
Interesting. So probably better for us all to just go soak lanes. Choose our lanes early, almost, League of Legends style, and just...
Yeah, ideally, if you're duo queuing, have your best wave clear. If you have one really good wave clear and it's a big map, let your team go mid, express that they should play passive as they possibly can, and then put yourself in a situation to where you can dismount, like somebody dismount in zone so that they can't make a free rotation top and they'll lose the minions on top or bottom, whatever lane you're in, and then you'll gain the advantage there. But technically, by not being in the mid lane in the first place, you're allowing your opponents to rotate faster by being able to mount up quicker and make that rotation to the other lanes faster by not being there. So it needs to be very calculated, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. I know this is like simple things that seem like I'm making them really hard, but they're actually really complex situations.
Dude, people have strategy discussions in Hearthstone and people still go, well, and that's a turn-based game. We're in real time here.
Yeah.
And you actually need to not only have the characters have the comp, but have the skill base to execute X thing. And that's a whole nother level. But lane clear. let's
Yeah.
for all the different and is there a support actually here? But for all the different roles, let's say I'm last pick and it could be anything. And we lack lane clear. Everything's very single targety. It's Vala, Raynor, oops. That's our comp. What can I add in the tank role, the assassin role, and the specialist role to give us that edge in the lane clear?
Zul, without a doubt, in the specialist role. In the tank role, it's Johanna is technically going to be the best. And yeah, just I would suggest only Johanna. Leoric's a little bit better in it, but he usually can't be ran in a solo tank situation, and he's kind of this weird. I wouldn't promote anybody, especially if you don't understand the value of wave clear, to be like, yeah, just go pick up Leoric. This will be a good choice. But Johanna in the tank role is going to be the best, even though I talk a lot of trash on her. In the support role, Rhaegar, Tassadar are probably two of the best. And in the assassin role, Jaina provides a lot, but I wouldn't promote her as something that you guys should be looking to pick her up for the wave clear.
Yeah, that's a big conversation right now. Is did Jaina get buffed? Her win rate says yes, but
Yeah, she was definitely buffed. I don't think she gained that much of a leap to where she's going to be far better, but she is not as bad as she was. Does that make sense?
That's good.
Comparatively, she hasn't jumped up a mile, but when you look at the numbers, like it was a direct positive effect on her. Dahaka is another good one that the chat just brought up for tanks. Also having the global, but again, he's kind of so weak as a tank overall. I don't know if I'd go out of my way to promote you picking that up in the first place. He has a lot of downsides when it comes to his trade-offs as a pick.
Well, and his skill base is wild. I mean, the essence management takes a dedicated Dahaka player to do.
Yeah. You definitely, it's a strange situation. For support, or for, I'm trying to think for assassins, why, I mean, Greymane's like okay at it, but he's not like holy cow good. Who am I I gotta bring up a list of heroes or something here. I don't know why I'm struggling so hard with this. For the assassin role, Brightwing's actually kind of good. She's not so much good in the race, but she can sit there and split soak when your team struggles with the wave clear. Oh, Falstad is pretty good at wave clear. Kilthos, that is without a doubt the best assassin when it comes to wave clear. And outside of that, nobody else is too outstanding. Sylvanas is another good specialist if you guys needed another one of those.
Sounds like specialists are good to go for the most part.
Yeah, by default, that's usually what their kit complements is the wave clearing, split pushing style. So by default, they're going to be more natural, but you shouldn't like overload on them because then your team fight potential drops so severely. It's usually the assassins that have wave clear paired with a specialist and then a decent enough front line are the most successful compositions.
Li Ming has fallen a lot.
Yes.
But she's still picked relatively early in most leagues. And she's got great, talent diversity that if I see this team start coming together, I can make some really interesting choices. I mean, Force Armor, Calamity builds, going with something Arcane Orby if there's no room for me to get in there and actually Calamity. Mm-hmm. If I'm missing lane clear, is that a Calamity build? Because
most are Calamity, yeah.
Okay. Orbs just kind of get absorbed.
Yeah, it's not really her best, and the positioning is unreliable, so that's why you see so much Calamity. Also, the reasoning for her prioritization, for the most part, is just because there's really very few heavy resources you can depend on for having mage damage in the game right now, and most of them are banned out or first picked right out the gates, so that makes Li Ming a bigger selling point on maps where she's not as bad, like Battlefield. She struggles a little bit on Infernal, Cursed Hollow, anywhere she can maximize her poke, but heroes like Kilthos, Falstad, and Li Ming are really kind of like the mages of the game right now, and all three of them are first pick, first ban worthy, or were at least, which is why she sees a little bit more value.
And that's the next question. What should be first ban right now? Lots of confusion. Yeah.
Get rid of Kerrigan. You either play the Kerrigan or get rid of it. I personally think that's your high success, is just to not let it be a thing until she gets touched. Learning to play Greymane, Zul. I would suggest if you know how to play Greymane, Zul, Falstad, Uh, if you're a good ETC in that role, Rhaegar, and if you can be like good at all those heroes, those are all really good. Getting ready to Falstad. I did a video a while back on like role isolation and drafting, and that's still pretty successful in solo queue, especially if your team shows what they're going to be looking to pick up. But really, it's just going to be those overly dominant heroes in certain situations that I would look out for. Like Greymane.
Should players go out of their way to learn Kerrigan, or do you think things are going to move fast enough at Blizzard that this won't be a problem for long?
That's a really good question.
Because Kael'thas, one could say, well, he's always getting banned. I won't worry. Now he's not getting banned.
Yeah.
Should people pick him up again? You didn't bring him up.
He's still really good. He is still really good. Obviously because of the wave clear, but then Gravity Crush having the single target isolation, having one of the longer AoE CCs in the game, and zoning potential, poke potential, build diversity. He's got a lot still going for him. So for sure, you should look to pick him up. He is first pickable without a doubt. But he's not a free win, if that makes sense. It's like very few heroes are that way anyways, but what
is the buzz around Tyrael right now? He got buffed, clearly. I mean, he's on his way up.
Yeah. He was already one of the strongest heroes in the entire game, but everybody refuses to accept it. And then they changed him.
Why do you say that?
Every single global championship that's ever existed, ever in Heroes of the Storm, has neglected Tyrael except for the best teams of that event. Every single one. They have always have it in the arsenal because his sanctification and his mobility and AoE team survivability is just so impactful in the game that he single-handedly can win it for them. And it's so good that like even at the world stage, they'll just bust it out even though they haven't played it for months. And we saw it with the Protect the Greymane. We've seen it in the past with protecting Sonya. He just does so much for the melees and the enabling, and they're almost always the most dominant strategy in the game. So he was great then, and he's great now. Personally, I'm a little bit sad that I don't get angelic momentum at 7, but outside of that, he has insane mobility for his team, the same survivability he had before. His passive requires less resources and is better offensively and defensively because the talent at which you pick it up on now. And then outside of that, he's pretty much untouched except for just you have to be a little bit smarter about your Qs.
Is he solo queue ready?
Yeah, he is.
As a tank? Just single tank?
If you have a melee, especially if you're duoing, that excels at killing your opponent's backline, and you work together and stay with them and kind of baby them, yeah, he is definitely solo queue ready.
But you suggest getting to that back line with sanctification on your kit, not judgment.
Yeah, don't judgment. That has not been a thing for a very, very long time. I would rather take falling sword because you're going to do more damage and probably be more effective.
So you just throw the sword back there, you join your Greymane as you destroy the back line, and then with shields and everything else.
Yeah, you go in. So ideally, this is what your thought process should be. You go in. It depends. We're gonna say we're 13-ish, right? You go in. You have imposing will. You have the auto attack debuff against your opponent. You also they're going to be a little bit slower. Your melee is going to be going in with you. You smite over your opponents. You give them insane mobility with 35% movement speed with your 4. And then you put it in a situation to where they're going to get into a lot of damage and you're going to be under pressure. You're going to sanctification, give them, again, as much mobility, CC, and everything of the like that you can. And then when they start falling behind and start about to die, you make sure you're wearing as much damage as you can the whole time. Then guess what? You die, and your passive is either number 1, going to gain insane value and hit 4 people and kill the squishy because your melee's been ripping them apart through sanctification, or you're going to die and go in protection and death, and they gain 50% of their maximum health as a shield while your passive is doing damage still to your opponents. In every way, it's just an insane character.
So you take the death shield at level 1.
If you trust your melee, yeah. When me and KO duo, and he's on Greymane, I take protection and death, or protection and death, and I'll take the sanct. I'll go the movement speed, and I'll just go in, and then like I go when I die, I got shield, and he knows, and he'll just stay on them the whole time, and then suddenly they think they're gonna get a kill, and then I turn the damage on them. He gets health, and he just wipes them.
Oh man, you sold that hard. I am excited. I will be subjecting people on the stream to Tyrael soon. I've got the bike and the demon skin already.
Yeah.
If he's good to go, that's fascinating. Well, DOQ with a good, good assassin and all those sort of caveats.
Yeah, and he's also great, like, against dive heavy compositions, right? Like the Arthas or the Illidan even, a pretty decent strategy. Like you can even just wait till the Illidan is going to dive and get that dance, and you just sanked and just hard focus him because he legitimately can do nothing to survive that situation. Like he can't even, you're like, well, my team's invulnerable. Yes, but what maybe some of the newer players might understand how the sanctification and divine shield work, you are not only not able to be hit, you literally can't be auto attacked. So he is losing his resets. He is overcommitting himself. He's going to force the meta, which will gain 0 value still, and it's 3 seconds to where he just can't do anything. You just get free reign, and he's so good against like ghouls, for instance, because you're always Army of the Undead. You're looking to gain value during that time. When you don't, Arthas is a baby, so you just sanked and like you remove a lot of what he's able to do as a hero. He is just universally one of the best heroes in the entire game, and has been honestly forever. It feels like.
Well, every single ability he has an "and" statement to it, which is just awesome. That's incredible. You sold it hard, man. I'm excited. That's my plan for the night. Well, we are winding down towards the end of the show, so we're going to grab a couple of questions from the chat. Okay. But I was interested by this one from Karsus, and he asked, where's Asmodan in all this?
Still ripping cheese. His strategy is stronger now than it's ever been. He still forcefully draws an entire team composition around him to be effective. He has still all the same problems, but his strategy has gotten better. And if you have signs of success with it in the mid to late game, he becomes even harder to deal with because of his catapult pressure that he can provide and the bonus to the minions. He was buffed, but again, the easiest composition is almost always the best composition, and he's very hard.
Should people play him in the same sort of style as Zul in the early game, trying to get those 2 lanes under their belt and let everyone else do everything?
Ideally, you want to try and stack. Like the first thing you want to do is just stack. Like if you have Johanna with your team, like she condemns, you end up hitting the stacks as best you can. Yeah, typically between 2 lanes is what you want to be concentrating on as the game moves on, using your split pressure from your passive, and then hopefully hitting large globes and just getting the Asmo Dunk Dream.
Trent asks, in solo queue, Hero League, should we ban for the map or just take out meta heroes? And I guess this goes across all leagues, just in general.
Both. You don't have to choose. Like every map has its own meta, right? So when I talk, let's talk about Battlefield of Eternity versus like Cursed Hollow, right? What do you want to remove when you think of like Battlefield of Eternity? What is the first thing you're like, I need to ban this right now?
Tyrande.
Tyrande, see, for me, it's like Greymane Falstad. They have the highest single target race in the entire game. Tyrande is a pretty big threat. But again, I kind of despise that hero, so I let her go through in most situations. But again, Kel'Thas is like the meta, right? And he's pretty decent on that map. But if you can win the race, nothing else matters. Like Sylvanas is going to be another one as well. Yeah. But then we haven't even named Kerrigan, because it's probably her worst map. Like, if she's not successful, she has very little racing potential and is a bit weak with your team. But the minute I go to, like, Tomb of the Spider Queen, now you're thinking, okay, well, Kel'Thas is a decent wave clear. He's still going to be a threat. Sylve's still a threat. But is Greymane suddenly that first pick? Like, he's not nearly as dominant. You can remove meta heroes and map specific.
That's a good way to think of it. It takes a lot of game knowledge, of course.
It does. If you have to choose one or the other, choose meta heroes. Because they're a reason they're universally meta, like, considered legends.
That's a good cap to it. Oh my goodness, Super Luigi. I'm going with that. Do you like the way bosses currently work in the game? Because Cursed Hollow is kind of brutal on the boss front.
But it's gotten changed quite a bit by this patch, right? I haven't played it enough to really know, but with the minions and the effect that they have with everything shutting down, bosses have become, I'm going to argue, probably more valuable. Do I like how they work? I think Curse could use some adjustments as a map overall, but I don't dislike how they work. I wish only that their information, I guess, on how they function and everything would have been a little bit more accessible and easy to understand at first, I guess. Just because it still is like very few people understand how they work, and I wish it became more universal knowledge.
You brought up Arthas as an example of with a dive Illidan.
Yeah.
Is that? I mean, he doesn't have any movement speed. He just keeps walking.
I mean, all right, so Illidan and Arthas thrive in the sense that they're so you're going to be enabling your Illidan better with the lack of mobility you're going to force your opponents to have, but then also both have kill potential on your backline, but also need to be forced down 5v1 to be able to confirm the kill onto them. So it puts yourself in a position to where if you have two threats, Illidan can't be the only threat or he's easy to deal with. We've seen that in all competitive. You've experienced it in your solo queue. But
Yeah.
Arthas is easy to deal with too. But put together, you have to focus. Do you want the Arthas or do you want the Illidan? And both of them complement each other because they work in that dive style of play, right? So they provide threat to your backline, and suddenly your Vol is 1v1ing the Arthas while your Illidan is 3v1ing the other two, and you're like, one of you is going to fall, right? And the question is like, it forces better teamwork from your opponents. It's not OP, but it definitely makes them need to be on the same page.
It's almost like the philosophy is let's give them two heroes they really want to kill at the same time, and they have to pick one, and they're going to do it wrong.
Yeah, it pretty much is what you're doing. Yeah,
that's awesome. Core asks, are you thinking about getting back in competitive anytime?
I think about it every day.
Sure.
Whether or not it'll actually happen is probably unrealistic. I not only enjoy what I do now, I think a bit more just because I am less dependent on other people and working with team dynamics that can be very difficult. But then also, I feel like I have more impact on the entire scene and things of the like. And I guess I feel like I have a brighter future and more influence and hopefully a positive way in the position I am now. So I don't really see a reason to, but I also will never tell you there's no chance. So that's like... It's a really probably bad answer because it's not concrete, but it's honest at least.
Sure, no, and that's perfectly understandable. I mean, it'd be sad to lose you as a caster too, but I'm sure sitting watching those games, and there's sometimes you just got to be like, can I just plug myself in here?
Yeah.
I'll win this for you guys. Come on.
Yeah, I feel that way a lot.
And we'll take this final question. Jay Howe asks, do you miss me?
Yes, I miss you, Jay.
Every day.
Every day.
Well, this has been fantastic. Thank you so much, Dreadnaught, for coming on today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man.
I could keep picking your brain here, but we will call it quits there. Where can people find you? Twitter, stream. What's coming up for you? What's the next big event people should be watching?
I don't know if that information is officially public, so I can't really say, but pretty much if it's a North American or European regional or the World Championship, hopefully you'll see me there. Hopefully. Other than that, Tempo Dread is obviously my Twitter. Dreadnaught_heroes. Twitch.tv/Dreadnaught_heroes is my Twitch. The only major thing I would hope that you guys, if you can only choose to do one thing, committing towards like my shameless plug here, would be hopefully you guys, like tomorrow we're going to release another episode of Beyond the Nexus. There's a lot of work and it's a very young project. But it has, in my opinion, a lot of potential. And I would like for anybody and everybody, it's on the Blizzard Heroes of the Storm YouTube channel that we host every week. Every storyline, if you enjoyed any part of that I dropped at the beginning, is all known by me because we work on the show and we tell you exactly what happened last week, what's going to be happening next week, what are the cool things, and even help you guys understand how to be a better player, like the Lunar Talk. We go in depth about certain heroes and things of the like. So hopefully you guys enjoy that, and I please look at it. And if you have any criticism, let me know because I do have a large impact on where that is going. Other than that, I mean, State of the Nexus, any event, anything, I don't know, Reddit, you'll see me somewhere in some way, shape, or form, and hopefully you enjoy what I have to say, I guess.
That show you do with Gilly is great because it does what we need, and it gets to people. We have to raise the awareness, the game knowledge for everybody, because right now we've got Redditors in queues with people are just playing for fun. And there's this gap as the two collide, and of course that leads to anger and stress for a lot of people. So it's awesome what you guys like, the lane, the sort of section you've added recently.
Yeah, we have way more than that.
Oh, fantastic.
We just haven't kind of, because we sit in this weird, it's just a weird time right now to be able to show everything that we have kind of in store. And that's why I said it's like a very much growing project. And we've had weird criticism about it so far going on, but we truly think it could not only be a great project, but just an insane promotion of our entire community and bettering the entire system. So I have high hopes for it, and hopefully you guys enjoy it.
Awesome. Well, everyone check out all those things, but certainly check out the Beyond the Nexus. This show was brought to you by patrons over at patreon.com/ITN. Thank you so much to our patrons for their support. Leave us an iTunes review, as this is primarily a podcast over at apple.com. Into the Nexus is produced by Amove TV and Declan H. and Cheesy Bob, so thank you to our producers. Catch the show live Thursday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern over at twitch.tv/AmoveTV. Follow us on Twitter at ITNcast. Join our Reddit, reddit.com/r/ITNcast. Follow Garrett when he's here over at Garrett Art, 2 T's in art, and follow me at Kyle Ferguson, 2 S's in Ferguson. And make sure you check out Stormcast from this week, episode 105, and Lords of the Storm 73. I'm not selling the book, as Garrett would accuse me if he was here. I just guested on some shows this week, showed those shows some love. It was awesome getting to hang out with them and spread the Gul'dan love, because I'm hoping he has a place in the near future. But we'll see what sort of buffs go his way. Of course, our codes always work. DoghouseSystems.com. Use the code ITN. Get a free 120 gigabyte solid-state drive added to your amazing Doghouse rig. And then tweakedaudio.com. Same code ITN. Gets you 30% off and free shipping on your next order of noise-reducing earbuds. We thank everyone for their support. We will be back next week. We'll be recording live from CreateCon next week, so there will not be an official show on Thursday. But I will be here streaming. We'll have our pre-show. We'll have some fun. We'll play some custom games, but the main show will be recorded live at Amove's first official con. So still a couple of tickets left for that. They're going fast. That's down in Florida, Orlando. So if you can join us, look forward to seeing you there. Dreadnought, thank you again for joining me.
Thanks for having me, man. It meant a lot.